Oh, hey, well, I guess I should actually flip it to the right screen. Starting on a win.
That might help.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Dirty Pool Podcast. We're doing episode 7. I can't believe it's number 7. And today we have somebody different than any of the other avenues of pinball that we've covered so far. This is Davey from Stumblor Mods.
Hey,
there he is.
Hey everybody. How's it going, Jeff? Thanks for having us on the show, man.
Cheers, man. So if you don't know, Davey produces basically the top tier creme de la creme pinball mods for a very select few games. And we'll talk about that in a little bit because I'm curious about what is your decision-making process when you do approach that. But aside from the business, there's a whole creative element to it. And I feel like your mods are, for lack of a better word, art. Like they really are like, they're not just plastic three-dimensional objects that you put on a playfield. You're actually making something that improves the game like it existed from the day it left the factory.
Oh man, well that's very kind of you to say, and I truly appreciate you saying that. Obviously, that's what we shoot for when we build mods for the games. But it just sort of, I guess, why that happens. It sort of just came out of what I'm interested in. So, I'm a computer programmer by trade. And, when I sort of took that knowledge into the pinball sphere, it sort of just made sense to start doing circuit boards and lighting patterns and things like that. And it kind of just evolved from there. The mods that probably you're familiar with, the ones for Godzilla, that was probably 6 or 7 mods into the catalog before things started really sort of ticking over. And by that stage, I'd sort of built up the software to the point where it could do all of that stuff. So it's been a long process, but I'm really pleased with where things have gone, and and I think that I sort of like to humbly take some credit for where modding is now. People are producing some absolutely fantastic work across the board, and it never fails to surprise me how good some people are at the work that they produce. And it's just such a joy sometimes to open those packages and see what people have produced and just not even know how they've done it sometimes.
So this was a question I had for way later, but do you think that because of how good mods have become now, that some of the manufacturers are kind of like leaving a gap so that mods can be made on their machines instead of trying to develop them the way they should be?
It's a funny question, that one, man. Yeah, and a good one too. So we have our own pod, as some people may know, and thanks a lot anybody who watches us. And probably about a year ago, there was a question, or possibly even an accusation, you might say, aimed at mod makers on Pinside that said that mod makers are to blame for why we don't get good enough games anymore. Right, that was the accusation. It was, no, I don't at all. I would love to think that manufacturers thought of us at all, but I honestly don't think that. I think that bomb, past history. I would never produce something myself that I thought could go out into the world and be improved upon by people later. I mean, that would be the equivalent of, say, me sending out a mod and going, well, I just won't glue those pieces together. I'll just let the customer glue them at the other end. Or, the lighting's a bit crap there, but hey, somebody else will improve it later on down the track.
There's also so many components that go into making a pinball machine. It's like to think that they really were like, oh, we should leave space for the mod makers. Like, no, they're consumed with all of the other disaster drama of getting a pinball machine out the door.
Yeah. No, I think it's a bit, it would be thinking way too much of ourselves to imagine that pinball manufacturers even sort of consider us to that degree. I mean, we've had a couple of shout outs from people like Keith Elwin at times. Keith Elwin's been interviewed on a pod or whatever, and somebody's shown him the Tokyo Neon and he's recognized it and said it's cool, and that's literally, for me, that's a massive win. But at the same time, that's like recognition. Oh yeah, I think that's cool. That's not a huge deal. That's probably a 10-second thought that he's had in the past that he's recognizing there. So no, I don't think that I don't think manufacturers are altering their behavior
I think
in order to fit us in.
The LE Kong, like I'm kind of peeking over at it now, but the biplane on it, there's things on it that have, you can see it there hiding in the background. Looks like you dove in to be an LE boy too. What are we doing?
Well, yeah, there is a good reason for that, though.
Research, we'll get to that. We're of course going to talk about some of the up and coming designs and production pipelines. But you kind of mentioned earlier talking about when you first started getting into that. And the first note I have here in my notes is, what was the first mod you made and how did it come about? And I think that's where did Stumblor come from?
The name.
No, the actual, we'll get to that too. But when you were like, hey, I need to make a mod for a pinball machine and this should be a business, which mod was that and what committed you to making a business out of it?
So I refurbed a Creature from the Black Lagoon pinball machine. And if anybody wants to see that refurb, it's on the website, sort of hidden,
let's pull it up right now.
The news articles and stuff. You might be able to find it if you go to the news section on the website. It'll be deep, so you might have to scroll back a few levels. But so I sort of picked up, and this is the first pinball machine I'd ever gotten. We were in bed one Saturday morning, and I asked my wife if I could get a pinball machine to work on and refurb. There it is there. So this is the hunk of junk that I picked up off eBay for like 100 quid or something. Needed an absolute major overhaul.
Wow, that cabinet looks like
it was
it's like a murder scene.
Toast. Yeah. So quite an interesting little project to embark on before you've even sort of, know what the heck you're doing. I mean, I was, when I was trying to undo the screws from the playfield, they were basically just breaking off. And, I was trying to drill them out and that wasn't working. I had no idea what I was doing.
So why not get a Creature in better condition? What fueled you to take this absolute disaster game? That's a very good question.
That is a very, very good question. I have no idea. Probably just lack of knowledge, really. Actually, originally I was going to turn it into a V-pin. So the fact that the playfield was toast wasn't that big a deal to me. Because I was going to just pull it all out and stick in a TV screen and stuff anyway. And I did all that, but then decided that wasn't scratching the itch. So I kept looking at this old playfield and thinking, surely I could, tart that up and, I'm sure it's probably good to go. And of course it wasn't. So I ended up getting a donor playfield. Most of the parts on it, I was able to save. All of the wire looms I was able to save. Ended up doing a bunch of, work on it, like wrapping all the cables and stuff. It was a huge amount of work. But there was stuff going on, health stuff going on with my family at that time. And so it was sort of a little bit of a way to just sit by myself and, think about things while I was grinding off rust on mechs and things like that. So anyway, this all came back together. It was a really enjoyable project. It looked amazing when it was all said and done. But the chase board was toast on it. Now, the chase board is a little circuit board that runs the lights on the whirlpool ramp and the, the whirlpool's the one down by the flippers, and the big circular ramp. I can't remember the name of it now on Creature. But there's sort of lights, and they chase in a chasing pattern like that. So it's just on off. And the board was toast, so I was going to have to get a new one anyway. And they are available from UFO Pinball. But I thought I could maybe design something that was a little bit better that could do some actual patterns across those lights rather than just the on-off pattern. So I kind of embarked on creating a board that could do that. And, I'd never designed circuit boards before, but sort of taught myself just by watching YouTube and learning as I went. And, it took probably a good 6 months and a lot of mistakes to get there. But eventually I came up with something that turned into the Chase Echo, which is still available now on the website. We've just done another run of them. And, interestingly, the code that went into that board that did those lighting patterns on the ramps is still like the precursor to all of the LED pattern work that we run across all of our boards, on all of our mods. So, while it was just a single color pattern for Creech, as it evolved through and went into RGB LEDs, we added color to those same patterns, and then added a Wi-Fi configuration interface, which is now turned into a Bluetooth configuration interface, and it's all just sort of grown and grown.
Mine are all Wi-Fi. I want the Bluetooth one. I mean, anyone who's used any of your mods, I would have to say the way the setup is listed, it sounds really intimidating. Like, oh man, you can go in and change colors and patterns and stuff like that. Like, that sounds like a lot of work. It's not. In fact, connecting to the Wi-Fi, I set my my Godzilla mods to kind of have like a icy blue and then fiery red when they're interacting, and it's pretty easy to do. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly some people who just leave it as is and never sort of delve down into that level of detail, but there's certainly a chunk of people who do, and there's nothing I love more than seeing, pictures out in the wild, of Godzillas out in the wild that have got my mods in them, that have clearly sort of had lighting changes done by the customer. And I just think that's fantastic, and they're kind of just living on beyond me, and giving people, sort of the ability to mod their machines in their own way. And I love that. I think that's such a great thing.
You said the big G word. We got to talk about Godzilla. I mean, when you think of Stumblor, you think of Godzilla. It's just, you have such a complete conversion of the game with so many different mods.
Yeah.
What drove that decision?
Yeah. I bet all the other mod makers are just like shaking their head. And I mean, yeah, it was the perfect storm really for this kind of thing. So, the Chase Echo sort of sold maybe 30 units or whatever. I turned that into a Lollipops board, which was a pop bumper mod, and I sold maybe 50 of those. It was just a hobby thing at that time. And then a mate of mine, John, sort of got in touch. J85M, people might know him. He's a mod maker as well. He's now a mod maker. We were both not really mod makers in those days. Got in touch with me and sort of just said he'd sort of seen the work that I'd done, and he said, "Oh, you should do a sign for Godzilla. I think it'd be really great for your style of modding." So I took a look at it and just sort of instantly came up with the idea of the three Japanese characters in a very sort of Tokyo billboard type thing. Went through a couple of iterations, stuck the same firmware code, like a variation of the firmware code that we're using in the Lollipops board. And then just kind of figured it would be just another fun little project. And, I might sell 50 or something along those lines. I think I had 20 ready at the time of announcement. And I was like, if I get through these 20, I'll do another 20 and it'll be great. And
little did you know.
Little did I know. So I'm sure people have probably heard this story before, but I'll tell it anyway. Like on the day of the announcement, it was like a Friday afternoon, and I got my spiel ready, and I posted it up on Pinside, and I waited 5 minutes, and there were no replies. And I'm like, that's cool. I've got to go into the city anyway to meet my wife for dinner. So I grabbed the kids. Come on, kids, let's go. And we jumped on the tube. And obviously there's no reception in the tube, so I couldn't check anything. All the way into Oxford Street. It's about a 40-minute trip on the tube. And we all got out at Oxford Street. We're waiting around for Kath, who's still coming from work. And I was like, I'll just check the Pinside thread. And I jump on, and it's like, there was already like 100 posts or something like that, like already. And I was like, what's going on? Is this good or bad? I couldn't quite work it out. Like, was I getting slammed? Like, were people?
Oh, no, it's probably good. It's Reddit that does the bad stuff.
Yeah. All news is good news, right? So kind of the whole dinner, I was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because like 100, I couldn't, at that time, I didn't even sort of have enough money in the bank account to buy the parts for that many mods. So we sort of had to quickly make a decision about, do I get a credit card and buy the parts that way, and then hope that it'll all work out and I can pay back that credit card? Like, we just didn't quite, you've got no experience with this level of stuff. So,
amazing. Well, one Pinside post overnight just created your business, and it was basically you either had to commit or pull the plug at that moment. Yeah. And, you're staring down, and this is still a side hustle too. So you've got your regular job, you got to do this on the side. You've got to take a risk in terms of the investment in the parts.
and you sort of haven't really done anything on this scale to the point where, what if there's a problem with it? What am I going to do? How am I going to fix that if things are out in the wild? Can I step up and manage the level of emails and PMs and everything that I'm going to get as a result of this, and all that kind of stuff? I suppose what all mod makers have to do when something of theirs blows up, which is done for people from time to time. This has been one of the big ones. Tokyo Neon's done over 2,000 now.
A lot of units.
So it's been a lot of units, and all the other buildings on top of that as well. I think that in terms of when that mod came out and what Godzilla was doing at the time and how that sort of moved into COVID after that, it was kind of just all, and possibly also that nobody had sort of done a mod like that before that had that level of interaction and configurability and firmware updates over the air, and so it was kind of a bunch of things that sort of drove it to, I guess, that success. I think I was very lucky and fortunate to have sort of been in the right place at the right time with the right product, and then was able to sort of back it up, I suppose, and not completely fall on my ass during the whole process.
Yeah, I feel like it's been, when did Stumblor officially start producing that? It had to be back when Godzilla came out, so at least. Yeah,
it's probably 4 years ago now, 5 years ago. Yeah. So,
I can't believe I thought it was over a decade ago.
No, man.
I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. We have a new puppy. So part of what we do here as well is have chat, interact, and ask questions. So Indie Arcade was curious when you restored your creature.
2021, by the way. Yeah, so 3 years. Only been 3 years. Date of manufacture. Sorry. Oh, whoops. Sorry, man.
Also, Nuclear Black has a really hilarious question. He's mentioning Elvin G's Mystery Castle, which I think I saw Carl from my pinball stream at one point. He wants to know if you're going to make a mod that actually feeds the ball correctly to the upper flipper. If you know anything about that game, that's pretty funny. But it is a good lead-in for how you decide when to make a game, or when do you make a mod for a game if it's successful enough. Check sound. What's wrong with the sound?
Yeah, sorry, that might have been. Yeah, your sound's coming in and out a little bit.
Cutting in and out.
Stuttering. How's my sound, guys? Anybody got my sound? My sound choppy as well? It's a Jeff check sound.
It's a Jeff check. Oh, that's because my CPU is overdriving. I think it's your website. Hold on. The Stumblor website playing nonstop animations was bricking my potato computer. Thank you for the check, everybody. Are we doing good now? This should be good.
Sorry. Yeah, it's probably installing spyware on your machine.
Yeah, Stumblor Mods brought to you by suspicious malware. Anyways, sorry. Thank you for that. So yeah, you started. When did the actual creature mod start production? Your creature project.
So that was probably 7 or 8 years ago now. And getting back to Mystery Castle. So I've played Mystery Castle. Have you played Mystery Castle, Jeff? Have you?
I've seen it played. I haven't personally played it.
Seen it played. Yeah. Because it's a super rare game, isn't it? So no, I'll probably never produce them unless it's like just for fun. Because obviously it's too rare a title. Now, working out what so I've to be really
just released an Elton John mod. Let's look at that. So Elton John moved. How many units did Elton John move, and how does that motivate you for? I'm going to guess probably 1,000, 2,000. The internet loves to do research. Chat. How many? Can someone look up how many units Elton John moves? So then it's more like.
So if you ever catch us at a show, if you catch me and Rob and a bunch of other mod makers at the show, this is invariably going to be the topic of conversation where we all start trying to guess what the production numbers were of particular games, because obviously that's a massive driving factor for whether you choose to mod a game or not. Now,
Sure.
it's obviously not the only deciding factor, because that would be super boring and lame and, you know, money driven and all the rest of it. You know, sometimes you just love a game and want to create a mod for it. And in the case of Elton John, that was certainly the case for that game. And it was a bit of a tentative sort of exploration into doing modding for JJP, which I've never done before.
Was the voltages similar? Did any of the systems like carry over easily from like your Stern stuff to that?
Relatively, yes, but the Elton sign that I did was being driven just from a like essentially a what they call a WS2812 lighting strip. So it's like if you see an LED.
I'm afraid now. Let me know if it starts.
WS2812. Yeah. So I'm just sort of bringing up the nerd, but basically an LED strip. So if you think of an LED strip or an addressable LED strip, that's going to be generally WS2812. It's like the you know, the most popular sort of form of LED strips. So what JJP tend to do for a lot of their signs is they run them all as essentially a big LED strip, except that every sort of item on that sign will be like a single pixel on that LED strip. So pixel 1, pixel 2, pixel 3. So in the case of this sign, those first 5 sort of lighting elements are 5 pixels on an LED strip. So the entire sign is just run directly from sort of 5 volts ground and the data line of that sign. So I didn't actually find out whether there were points that I could hook into in JJP games, but we've done similar investigations with other people, other customers, and apparently there's so many positions that you could hook into in JJP games. It's not funny. There's like 3 in the back box and there's 2 in the cabinet, and you know they're all 12-volt lines. So I think they're highly conducive for modders actually who want to be putting power out of games.
Available for anybody trying to do it. For a lot of the consumer base that's curious when you're going to be doing the black and white version of the Elton John sign. How long are we going to have to wait for that?
For the black and white version, but there's no black and white version of the Elton John game, guys. So you'll be waiting a while. Yeah. Well, the big talk is when who was talking about what game was it? Was it for Kong? Maybe I think somebody was asking about the black and white version of Kong and when that was coming out. I'm sure that's what they were asking about.
There's no way.
People are waiting.
There's no way.
Well,
I feel like Stern has received enough feedback about when they shouldn't do black and white games that just doing it arbitrarily on every release is probably not the best idea.
Probably not the right move to make. Yeah, I mean, I think that's why Metallica was probably bad for them in some ways because it was a massive hit, right?
Sure.
So because Metallica Remastered was such a massive hit, they're going to be like, oh, we could do remasters of loads of games. So we're going to.
I don't think we're looking at 3 cornerstone games a year anymore. I think those days are done. I think they're going to do two cornerstones and then a remaster every year. If I had to guess, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that would be a good move on their behalf. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, how Harry Potter sells as well. Now, obviously, Harry Potter, is being closely watched by mod makers as well. You would expect it to be selling a huge amount of units based on the IP alone. But the word is that Guns N' Roses shifted 7,000 units back.
Oh, really? Well, then we did some math on that they would need to shift about 5,000 units in order to recoup the purchase of the license cost. But if you're saying that they made 7,000 units on GNR, then I don't see that being a problem with Potter. But we'll see. It needs to be a good game first, I would imagine, unless people are just going to buy it.
GNR was a different time, though, too, wasn't it? Like, when GNR came out, it was like, pinball was really in a golden era. LEs were still being purchased to flip. It was a very different time. I'd be surprised if they'd go over GNR numbers on Harry Potter, but I guess we'll see. I think they were still releasing their sales figures at the point where GNR came out, whereas they're not releasing them anymore.
So Howard has a question. Oops, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go on.
We're playing the Zoom delay latency game. By the way, anybody watching this and wondering why people talk over each other on a podcast, it's because there's about 5 seconds of latency. Those who don't know, Davey, you're located in the UK. So if you buy a Stumblor mod, it comes from overseas. But you are not from the UK. You're an Aussie, just like David from Barrels.
Yeah. That's right. Yep. Yeah. Pinball's very big in Australia. So, I cut my teeth over in the pubs over there. I think Theatre of Magic was the first game that truly got me hooked. And after that, it was Creature, which is the reason why I sort of came back to it later on in life. But yeah, I'm from Australia, but been living in the UK for the last 17 years. Not that you can tell from my accent, which
no, not even a little.
Not changed yet. No. Even my family are just like, nope, hasn't changed.
So Howard asks, how much crossover is there from the VPin community to modding, such as LED strips and stuff like that? Does the VPin software communicate in a format that you could put physical stuff in the cabinet?
Question. That's a really great question. There is a fair bit of crossover, actually. So projects like Pin to DMD, which is essentially an open source-ish, it's not really open source, but a community-driven color DMD clone, I suppose you'd call it a clone, but that started out in the VPin scene as a way of essentially having color DMD for VPin games. And so all the colorizations started out as VPin colorizations, and then they thought, hey, we can take this into the real pinball arena. And that's why we now have Pin to DMD on real pinball machines. Likewise,
a friend of mine actually colored those for a while. He was responsible for doing the colors, and the technology that stuff works on is pretty fascinating. It basically scans to see what frame it's at, and then looks at what the coloring should be. So sometimes you'll get frames where they're not colored correctly, and all of a sudden the color slaps onto it because it's currently doing its little thinky ding, trying to figure out what frame it's supposed to be coloring or what frame it's looking at.
Yeah, it is absolutely fascinating, and not only that, but an absolute monumental amount of work. So if you ever talk to a colorist, anybody, then please buy them a beer and say how much you appreciate the work that they've done, because it's hours and hours and hours of really boring, painstaking labor, just so that we can all enjoy whitewater with extra blues, so.
Well, and to your point earlier where you were talking about doing it because you liked it versus it making money, most of the people that do the color DMD colorizations own the games and want the color DMD for their games. So they're not really artists. They're just they're super fans. I mean, every pinball person's a super fan to a degree, I suppose.
Yeah. And we produce those Pin to DMDs commercially, and pay a donation to the colorists every time we use one of, because that's the new relationship that we're all sort of working under. And I love doing it. But it's, it's like $20 or something per game sold or something like that. So this isn't huge money. It's a little bit of pocket money for those guys, every time their colors get used, and they thoroughly deserve it. So yeah, anybody who's using their stuff, make sure you tell them how much you love them, because they're great dudes, all of them.
This question's too good.
Okay, I was going to say just one more aspect of the VPin crossover is PinMAME as well. So PinMAME is the core software that interprets the ROMs of a historical pinball game and converts it into a format that can be then turned into a virtual pinball machine. It's called PinMAME. So in much the same way as MAME is multi-arcade
machine emulator, I think.
Machine emulator, yeah. Okay. So PinMAME is like a way of interpreting pinball ROMs in the same way, and converting them into VPin software. Now, PinMAME is used in, I think, I'm not sure whether Fast use it in their board sets to interpret old ROMs. I think maybe they've done it a different way now. But certainly there's a whole bunch of CPU emulators that are now running PinMAME as well. And likewise, there's some movement as well into pinball manufacturers using virtual recreations of the games as they're coding, so that you don't actually have to have a real pinball machine beside you as you're working through the code. You can have it set up in a virtual environment, test all the shots, jump to a section in the code or whatever, in much the same way as you would do any coding, but doing it all completely within a virtual environment, which will massively speed up production of code. I'm not sure how many of the companies are doing that yet, but it's certainly possible. With using VPX and PinMAME and software like that, and yeah, I think all of that stuff is shared, across those boundaries. I think fans of one thing will generally be fans of fans of virtual will be fans of real as well, and there's a lot of crossover. So yeah,
I haven't heard of a lot of people that are bagging on virtual pin in recent years. Like I don't stream virtual pins, but I have nothing against it. And I think virtual pinball is just as much real pinball as anything else, especially with how prohibitively expensive most games are. We have a lot of fans of virtual pinball on the channel. So yeah, it's cool to see that people working hard in the mod community in those realms are pushing it to try to, I don't know, make a relevant crossover where the line of hardware and software for those games is going to be more and more blurred.
Yeah. Look, I think discounting, and certainly there's a lot of pinball people who do discount it outright and just say it's not real pinball, it's a piece of shit, doesn't feel right, whatever. I think that is ignoring a lot of very, very smart people and some amazing work that they're doing. And you would do it to your own detriment, because if you don't keep an eye on that stuff, you won't see some of the amazing progress and work that they're doing, and how that can be used in real pinball. Sure. For the reasons I've just
make wild decisions, because you don't have to worry about whatever prototyping or building white woods for it and let it rip.
Yeah. There's a lot of really exciting stuff that could be used in real pinball, more than it is too.
Sure. So Indie Arcade Wave asked this question. I think this is pretty unrelated to my notes, but an excellent question. So he's like, now that you're being confident with mods, have you ever thought about making a homebrew? The Stumblor Homebrew.
Oh boy. Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, I would love to. Yes, 100%. I think there's not a pinball player alive who hasn't dreamed of making their own pin, is there?
True.
If anybody has not thought about what would make a good pin, then I question your commitment to this hobby. Yeah, man, I've got a ton of ideas, an absolute ton, and a couple of absolute crackers too. I mean, everybody thinks that their idea is the best idea since sliced bread, but I would absolutely love to do it. I don't think that it's physically possible for me to do it currently, just because I'm just 24 hours slammed at the moment.
The list for back orders for your stuff is enormous. Is there ever a time where you look at the numbers of how many units need to ship for all of the different products and you're just like, oh my God, what am I doing?
The trick is not to think about it too much, man. I've got to say, like, you have to have the blinkers on and just get busy. It is a lot sometimes. Particularly when you're the kind of person who likes to take on projects too. So somebody comes to you and they've got an awesome idea, an awesome opportunity, and you kind of just like, I really want to work on that. And so you just say yes, and you'll be like, I'll be fine. And then you find yourself in this position where there's just physically not enough hours in the day to get everything done. And I would have to say that I'm probably pretty close to that at the moment. It's a case of staying up late and waking up at 5 to respond to emails and do things like that, and then get to work and then try and prioritize as much as possible, and try and delegate to the people who work in the workshop as well. And for most of the part, that works fine. But it's always a learning process too when you get it wrong, and you're always going to get it wrong. So, getting back to the original question of building my own pinball machine, I would absolutely love to. And I firmly believe that one day I will. But it'll have to be sort of when I hit semi-retirement, whenever that is. And, in much the same way as, I'm not playing enough pinball either, which is a big problem, I think, just because it's always work and it's not enough playing. And I try and do more playing I try and set time aside for that because I think it's a really, really important facet of building mods is actually being a hobbyist as well. I don't believe that you can be one without being the other effectively. But still, it's not really enough to get the job done. It needs to be, I need to be playing more than I am.
Isn't it kind of scary when you start taking on a hobby more as an occupation, and like the fear of like losing the interest in the hobby because you spend so much time doing it as a job is I don't think something that a lot of people think about before diving in. You just get consumed by it and then realize afterwards you're like, oh shit, like I just spent 10 hours working on pinball.
Yeah, and that's that is a scary thing, I think. I mean, fortunately, I do love the hobby and love creating mods so much that even though it is intense and stressful and complicated, I still really, really get a buzz out of it. Like when you receive a lovely email from someone who's just absolutely buzzing on an install that they've just done and they can't believe how good it looks or whatever. And look, sometimes you open emails with trepidation. You're thinking, oh God, what's it going to be now or whatever. And then you get an email that's just like, hey man, just wanted to get in touch to tell you how much I'm really enjoying this and, keep up the great work and everything you're doing for the hobby. And that's it. And you're just like, oh, it's so nice. It's just like,
as a shout out to your own customer service, I admitted full-fledged in an email when I installed my Subway, or I guess it was the Noodle Shop mod for it, that when I had returned it, it wasn't on the magnet, or it was on the magnet thing. So it had like impacted it going back into the playfield on Godzilla. And so it like took out one of the LEDs on the top of it. And I emailed you and was like, hey man, I put this back in. I'm a dumbass. It broke the board. Like one of the LEDs is out. And you sent me a new board. Just like that. It was shipped out the next day. So,
Oh, thanks, man. No, look, I mean, I don't believe the customer's always right. Like, sometimes people go, the customer's always right. You just got to make the customer happy and that's fine. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that because, I've had some horrible people and few and far between, one or two maybe, and I could probably remember them, now I can remember their names. But, some people are just horrible. And I think that in those types of situations, I'm just like, look, man, full refund, I won't send you any more mods. We'll just call it a day. You get your full refund so that you're cool, I'm cool, and we just won't work together again. Like that's how I deal with those situations. But literally everybody else, it doesn't matter whether it's your fault or whether you're the next buyer of the mod from somebody else. So, it's been an indirect sale or a double indirect sale or whatever it is, as long as you're a cool person and you're kind and honest or whatever, then, I'll just, I believe that aspect of it, that level of customer service when, somebody's a hobbyist and, you didn't mean to do it. And, you could look at that particular thing as a failure of the design that it shouldn't be capable of breaking in that way. So, in terms of sort of replacements, we've got a pretty strong policy of just sorting people out regardless of what the cause is. It's obviously something I try and reduce as much as possible because it does eat a lot of time, servicing sort of that aspect of the business.
Sure, working on new developments and new products. It's easy for people to get I think people are so accustomed to dealing with like faceless corporations and channeling their anger of customer service on that it's easy to forget that not all companies are that. And sometimes they're just small mom and pop shops and, people working in their workshops, and that when you mouth off and try to vent all your rage because of something that occurred, you're not really helping yourself solve that problem.
No, not at all.
At all.
And it does surprise me too, because, as pinball hobbyists, like you have to live around failure, like constantly, everything's breaking or failing or not working properly. You have to have the glass off and you have to have the hood up and you have to be problem solving constantly. And while too much of that can be frustrating, it's also probably partly the reason why we do enjoy doing what we do, because there's also a buzz in solving that kind of problem. When you have a problem,
fun, man. Tinkering is like the best part of the hobby. Yeah. Except when you have to take the glass off for the 5th time because you forgot like a screw or didn't put a rubber back on. And at that point, you're just like, fuck it, I'm going to go have a beer. I'm done.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. You know what the worst part of
the
the
balls
hobby is?
in. I've done that.
We're forgetting to take the balls out, man. Forgetting to take the balls out. And I don't care how long you've been doing this for, you're still going to forget to take the balls out. I still forget to take the balls out.
So true.
From time to time. Yeah. All
right. So when people are getting into making mods, right? So do you prototype your stuff in like SolidWorks, for example? Like, what is your technical production method? Like, where do you start when you're making a mod?
What do I start when I'm making a mod? So it's changed over the years from time to time. I mean, I use Fusion as my main 3D rendering CAD tool. Rob, who's at TAP, who I do the pod with, he uses SolidWorks. So SolidWorks is also a very good bit of software. But I use Fusion just because that's what I know. And it's changed over the years exactly what I do. But what I tend to do nowadays is...
Quick shout out. Tep's going to be on the podcast too in the future. He does amazing toppers.
Yeah. Rob and Alec are both awesome dudes, man. Very close friends of mine, and they're great people to work with. Very professional. So this is something that I'm working on for Kong. And like obviously it doesn't look like much right now, right? Because where's my camera? Because it's just a chunk of plastic. So all I did was, I think I modeled this up this morning just based on the area. So I took a couple of measurements. I took a measurement of the plastic, traced the plastic, tried to work out where the screw holes were, tried to work out what the general sort of shape of the area was. And then got that into the CAD program and designed it all and got the dimensions all, and then printed it this afternoon, brought it back in tonight before the pod, and then just fitted it into the game and realized it was too wide. The ball path through there needed to have a centimeter taken off. Because obviously if you don't have the CAD files for the game,
right. How are you supposed to
sort of have
to line stuff up? Right. You just kind of from the hip shoot.
you kind of just have to do it that way. And you take measurements and and you'll generally be pretty close, and taking tracing plastics and doing things like that certainly really helps in that regard. But ultimately you just have to print some stuff and fit it in the game and see where you need to take some of the edges off and stuff. So as you can see, I got this one completely wrong. I don't know what I was doing today. I think I was really busy. But so you can see that whole area there. So I got that completely wrong. I don't know what I was thinking.
That's the woodcutter mark for get rid of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I just
X.
use like a gold pen. Yeah, and then I'll go home tonight, take some more measurements from this, change that design, do another print, take it back in tomorrow, and if it generally looks like the right shape, then I'll then raise it to the level it needs to be, because it's going to go up from that point, and then start thinking about where circuit boards are going to go, start thinking about where cable lines are going to need to go for power, whether the controller board, because there's always, for my stuff, there's always a controller that does all the software and all the lighting patterns and all the sensing, whether that's going to be in the mod itself or whether it's going to be in a secondary board below the playfield. Because this one's not very big, it'll most likely be somewhere below the playfield. And then it's sculpting. So either I'll do the sculpting in ZBrush, or I'll use a freelancer or a number of freelancers to work on the sculpts. Generally, if it's more figurative stuff, I'll get a freelancer to do it, because usually they're better positioned for doing that kind of stuff, more artistic. And, if anybody wants to engage with freelancers to do similar stuff, then Fiverr is a really good resource for finding people. My recommendation there is to find people quite close to home for you, just because your time zone differences will be better. You can always get on the phone to them and explain things. There'll be less language barriers, that kind of thing. So, if you're doing a search on Fiverr, make sure you do a search for designers that are sort of within, your country or your area. And then just go from there, really. I mean, you know, in terms of circuit boards and lighting, you know, you can do very simple stuff like just tying into inserts or the GI for your lights. You know, Comets sell some fantastic products just for tapping into those kind of things if you want sort of that level of interactivity, or if you want to go higher levels of interactivity. You know, I've built free boards for other mod makers that they can use to do sort of just like a timer on a light, so that if a switch gets hit, a timer will turn on for 10 seconds and turn a light on for 10 seconds. Or you can go the whole hog and do, you know, crazy lighting patterns that emulate fire or water or rainbows or whatever, really. You know,
which some of those presets are programmed into your
that's right,
Wi-Fi
yeah.
boards.
Yeah, if you want to go that direction, give us a call. Yeah.
It's wild to me how much of like an artistic merging there is for the mod making for this type of work, because it really is like a technical thing that is also very artistic. I was talking with Bowen about rule design too, and I think that's one thing I love so much about pinball, is that it really is kind of like a synergistic like marrying of mechanical design and artistic kind of like design as well.
Yeah.
Do you manufacture your stuff is resin printed, right? I feel like it's not.
It's all over the shop, really. So we use like literally all over the shop. So we use some PLA, which is just, you know, filament printing.
3D printed filament for those who don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody who's got a home 3D printer, they'll be using either PLA or some other derivative, but it's called filament printing. It's just the general one that you see. But it won't be for any parts that are visible to the eye, if you know what I mean. So generally it's not really of a good enough quality to have it as the only thing. Although I have, you know, like the quality level of parts and printers is getting better and better. And I received one mod last night, which I featured on the pod, that was definitely PLA printed, and you could not tell. It was absolutely gorgeous. So, you know, the lines are getting blurred in that regard, but generally I mean, PLA is quite tough, so I'll use it for quite functional parts like gearing and racks and things. So the theatre building that I'm doing, that's got like a collapsing wall. The wall itself is nylon, a technology called PA12, which is just very beautiful and tough, and you can't see any print lines. So the Tokyo Neon black outer shell is PA12 nylon, but the gearing system that lowers the wall in the theatre is PLA, just because it's really strong. And then for the buildings on Tokyo Neon, they are initially resin printed on a 3D resin printer, and then we go at them with a Dremel to give them some decay and destruction. They're then cast in silicon and then resin cast to get the final parts, and then painted, dry brushing and things over the top of that. That's then mounted onto a PA12 frame, and then the circuit boards and everything get stuffed into the internals and all wired up to everything. And
do you have a history of education and material? I mean, like, this is a lot of knowledge that goes into knowing what will and won't work for what kind of problem you're trying to solve per mod.
Yeah.
Like, what is your traditional background?
Programmer, a computer programmer. Yeah. Yeah. So circuit board design and materials and engineering even are all things that I've sort of had to learn on the hoof. If there's a certain process or whatever that's sort of outside of my skill set, then we've sort of got subsidiary companies around the place that we work very closely with that can assist in that regard. So we've got a guy up in the Midlands who's been working with us for, you know, a couple of years now, who, you know, has got people on his staff that can do sculpting work, who can do cast resin sort of things, and likewise suppliers in India that we've got who can do vac molding. So this workshop is probably only big enough for 3 or 4 people to work in at any one time. We certainly don't have any big machines. All my printers are at home.
You mentioned a medium tour. Did you want to show people around a little bit with the mobile cam?
Let's do it. Can we do that now?
Yeah.
All right.
Melody says, thanks, Davey, for sending the UFO sensing board and then asking when the middle building for Godzilla is coming. Yeah, I got to be honest, Davey, the only reason I asked you on here was so I could try to earn some good, good karma and getting myself moved up the list. That's actually not true.
Not happening, Jeff. Not happening. Well, look, this is the theatre building. We've been working on these today. So we've been working.
Yeah, if you're watching this on the audio podcast later, I urge you to check out the YouTube so you can see what you're actually looking at.
Yeah.
And there's a little fire emblem that sticks out too when it lowers.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know if I can quite show you that yet because we haven't mounted that yet. So this is the it'll get blurry if I take it too close, but this is the wall that drops, and then essentially this fire sticks out the side of the building, and it's all flaming with an LED strip that you can see. It's all connected up there.
Cool.
And that's the gearing system that I was talking about earlier. There's a servo there and the PLA gear, and this is a rack. I think they call it rack and pinion linkage. And that's all connected up to essentially a lolly board in here that does all the...
Do you mechanically test these to determine how many kind of uses they'll be able to go through without failing?
Yeah, definitely. So you can sort of, you just build a special firmware that essentially just, drops and raises that wall. Yeah, and then you just leave it in one corner of the workshop for a week and see what happens.
It's like having a 6-year-old in the corner play with your pinball machine, right?
Yeah, exactly. They'll very quickly work out, where all the stuck balls go. Yeah. So theatre's coming. Now I just need to try and work out, because what I need to do is potentially.
Melody's also asking. You have an app out now for, I'm guessing, iOS and probably other platforms. How is that planned on being integrated with your future mods?
Well, it's automatic with the future mods. So so the legacy mods are running a certain controller, and all of the modern mods are using a new controller called the ESP32. Now, that's the controller that's compatible with the new app. It's far and away a better user experience. Which is unfortunate in some ways, because it means that whatever the user experience was before, it's not as good as what it is now.
Sorry, before new UI, right?
Yeah. So we do have a solution for that. You can convert the older mods to use the new app by using a little converter board, which is this guy here. So this is called One App, and you sort of just plug it into the header of the legacy mods, and it will enable you to use the new app. The new Bluetooth app, which is iOS, Android, and on the web, is far and away a better system. It's written in React Native, which is a fully modern piece of software. It enables me to, it sounds lame, but spread my wings in terms of the programming. I was always a little bit restricted with how things were previously, because you're essentially serving static web pages with jQuery underneath the hood, but it wasn't very sophisticated. It wasn't very reactive. I couldn't do very much without creating bugs, and it was very difficult to test things like this. Using React Native, it's just a lot smoother process for creating a lot better apps. So the experience overall is just far, far better.
I don't think that's lame. I think that it shows that you actually give a shit about your products and that you're trying to expand their usability to be less cumbersome through new technology that's more accessible.
Yeah. So when we've actually got Melvin to thank for that. Melvin was the one that suggested that we should head in that direction when that Alice project came about. So really, it was him that sort of pushed for it, and I'm so glad he did, because it was the right move for sure.
I had one question before that, but I guess you already mentioned Alice, so we kind of got to jump into that. So if you don't know, it was announced by Dutch Pinball that Stumblor is essentially now kind of like the official sculpt producer / like playfield mod technology partnership with them. Can you talk a little bit about what that means for your relation with Dutch?
Yeah. So Melvin and I have known each other for ages. We worked on Funhouse 2 together as testers. And this was pre sort of Stumblor blowing up days. And obviously before he was sort of doing a lot of work. We were essentially both just hobbyists who wanted to be involved in sort of a fun project with Pedretti. So we kind of met each other on that project and, got along really well, became friends. I sent him a couple of Lollipops boards because he was really interested in it. And then sort of as he and for anybody who doesn't know the sort of the backstory, Melvin bought a shipping container full of assets from the Deeproot liquidation sale. And
Deeproot is Papa Duke's failed Kickstarter for everybody who isn't familiar. And they had a bunch of materials, art assets, and IP ownership, and it was kind of divided among most of the pinball companies. Turner picked up a few. That's where you see Merlin's Magic and Ninja Eclipse, among others. But his Magic Girl IP and a bunch of other stuff. So that's what that is.
Yeah. So I think and I'm just trying to get the story right. So Melvin, I think, purchased those assets from Turner, and those assets being Alice in Wonderland, which was essentially just a mock-up sort of machine that Public put together. It was Retro Atomic Zombies Adventureland. It was Magic Girl. And that might be it, I think. If anybody in the chat knows if there was any others that I'm missing out on, then. But essentially it was those, and plus a whole bunch of J-pop sort of personal items that Melvin ended up returning to him, actually. It was like his laptop, and it was like, I think some of his kids' stuff and stuff like that.
Nothing like having some of your kids' stuff inside of a large shipping container. That's normal.
A bit weird. Melvin has always been a lover of weird and rare pinball machines. To give you an indication, like Was is his favorite game of all time. So he's into that kind of whimsical, weird, non-linear kind of, or I guess non-normal pinball machine.
Sure, like
so that's, I guess, ideas. Yeah. So this is where kind of his interest, I guess, in these licenses sort of came from originally. So he started producing Alice in Wonderland, and got in touch with me. I think not very early on in the piece. I think it was probably quite close to a finished game by that point, to get involved. And he wanted to use the lolly board for the side rails. He wanted to use it for a bunch of other elements in the game. He wanted to use it to control. Well, I don't think we'd sort of done the Jabberwocky arm at that point, because at that stage the lollipops couldn't really do servos, I don't think. But he sort of also said, but I want it to be like, really user friendly. I want it to ideally be app controlled. And so I was like, app controlled. Well, that's not going to be possible. And unless we change controllers to ESP32. And I was like, but why don't we change it to that anyway? And I think I'd sort of been hitting some walls in terms of like memory optimization and stuff with the old controller anyway. And I was like, I should just bite the bullet and go for it. And I did, and actually got a pretty, working solution out in like about a week of that.
So the Dutch collaboration really pushed the technology for your own board further.
Absolutely. 100% it did, yeah. So I'm very, very thankful to Melvin for doing that and making that suggestion. And, because it's a far better product now than it was prior to that relationship. And, you know, alongside that, I was also just very thankful to him in particular for investing that trust, I suppose, in the modding industry. You know, he's got Lior to do all of the sculpting work in the game. Lior's obviously one of the biggest modders of all time, does incredible work, and then used me to you know, do these lighting effects in the side rails and elsewhere. And, you know, he's just a really big advocate for the modding scene. And, you know, he's gone on to show that by sort of bringing us into the fold in that way. And it's always been something that both Rob and I have always talked about, you know, getting closer to the manufacturers, getting a data line of information coming out of the game that we can interpret and do things with. You know, historically, you know, as you know, we're sort of tying into lamps using T-splices. In some case, people are using croc clips. It's not a great user experience. There's a lot of scope for customers to get it wrong. There's a lot of scope for things to go wrong, things to be plugged in the wrong places, all kinds of stuff. So having the, you know, a more official way of getting access to that information, you know, via a USB cable would be like the holy grail of modding.
And what a way to open up the type of potential mods that can be available. I feel like there's some, like, you know, Scorebit also has kind of some legs in that, trying to create a data pipeline that can be used for all sorts of stuff that they're trying to integrate with games from the get-go.
Well, and Scorebit is the number one reason why we're all so apprehensive about just going in without the permission of the manufacturers, because that's what they did, and it ended up being like a 12-month cat and mouse game between them and Stern to you know, get that information. You know, they got the information, Stern would shut it down. They'd have to change the code and you know, create a backdoor and get around it and get the information some other way. Stern would shut that down. It was 12 months. The word on the street is that, like, Stern spent about $100,000 to just to screw up that connection.
And like, why?
Which is just,
it's ridiculous.
Why? Well, Insider Connected was what people said, because they were trying to protect that.
Sure, but they've had how many years of development on Insider Connected, and all you can do on it is put a little crab graphic on your name and look up your high scores. I mean,
yeah. I think it's just really sad. It's a big waste of time. None of it benefits the consumer at the end of the day. You know, we all love Scorebit. We all want Scorebit, and we want it to be on every machine.
Yeah,
you know,
Stern's not the only one that should be under fire here, though, because Jersey Jack had that like integrated in their code from day one, and I guess they just stopped. I don't know what happened there. I'm not trying to start the rumor mill, but
I don't know.
Scorebit
either,
is no longer
honest,
in Jersey Jack games for as far as I know.
No, I mean, look, we hacked the Stern node protocol. So me and a good friend of mine, Vincent, who goes under the name Ashram56, we always sort of talk behind the scenes. Vincent lives in France. I live in the Cape. We always talk behind the scenes about all the fun, nerdy, technical stuff in pinball. And we sort of came up with the idea of hacking the Stern node protocol to try and get access to all of the switch data and all the lamp data, just so that it would be, from a user
you can make better mods with it, for sure.
Make better mods. And, you know, you just take out one of the Ethernet cables, you plug it into the mod, and suddenly you've got everything that you need without having to screw around with T-splices or croc clips or anything. And we did it. We cracked it, and, you know, I was getting all of the switch data out of the node protocol, and I thought this was the, you know, a new dawn for pinball modding, and announced it on Pinside. You know, people were like, "Oh, you surely should be sort of mentioning this." And now what happened is that a couple of weeks later, and I've never actually proven that the two are related, so take all this with a grain of salt, but a couple of weeks later, Stern released an all games update that didn't actually do anything from what I could see, except the Stern node protocol had been updated across all those games. The version number had changed. Suddenly none of that
your
code
stuff stopped working.
Yeah, stopped working. And so you're like, okay, this isn't this isn't a viable way of doing it, because if, you know, say you had 1,000 mods out in the wild all using this tech and suddenly none of them worked, like, you'd have to go into hiding. Like, it's just not something that I want to have to deal with. So, you know, that kind of proved to me that unless you have their permission, it's not a path that's worth going down.
Sure. But philosophically, it makes no sense either. I mean, you're creating more opportunities for people to want to own Stern pinball machines by creating, you know, mods and toys, for lack of a better word, that make them more attractive. And you're not damaging. It's not like you're selling the decrypting algorithm or whatever to anybody. It's like they're protecting it for a reason that makes no sense.
Yeah, I see it as being an opportunity for both us and for them. And, you know, we're just going to keep pushing for it. And, you know, the more that everybody talks about it and mentions it and thinks about it and tries to work out a way where it can be productive for both them and for us, you know, the more likely it's going to be that it will happen one day. And all it really needs is a conversation. You know, you just go into a couple of meetings and they go, yeah, you know, we can do that for you. And then suddenly you're off. So, you know, in much the same way as it happened with Dutch, and obviously Dutch is a much smaller company, but it can happen. You know, they just need to see the benefit in doing so.
Sure. And it's not like they need to do any extra work too, other than allowing you permission to do so. You're the one doing the legwork. So it's not like they need to invest any money in it. So it's silly for them to invest even tons of money to block it for no reason.
Yeah.
I digress.
So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. We're going to do.
Well, there's plenty of other pinball manufacturers that are probably interested in having their games work better with your technology. One of those is Dutch Pinball, which we were just talking about. So to continue that. So we're getting back to Dutch Pinball. Is that what you want to talk about? Yeah. So, I mean, you know, you've started this relationship with them. I think Alice looks amazing. I haven't played it yet just because Dutch Pinball has a hard time getting overseas, especially now with all this tariff horse shit. So I'm curious to see it. I think it's interesting that it's basically a Papadook sketch, for lack of a better word, right? And then it was taken to the finish line through Dutch. So I'm just, in terms of your relationship with them, like, are you now going to be improving Dutch Pinball games with Stumblor's kind of like eye for technology and design?
We'll definitely be working together again. Yes, for sure. You know, it's a really great working relationship.
Also, you confirmed Kong mods too, by the way. Officially / unofficially.
That's probably the worst kept secret. Yeah, D&D mods and Kong mods coming soon, and Jurassic Park mods. That's the next one off the line. Is actually
interesting. As somebody who owns a Jurassic Park, that's interesting to me. By the way, you mentioned your podcast twice, but you haven't said the name of it. It's In Before Lock. Go ahead, plug it. There's no reason you can't.
Yeah. So yeah, it's because I'm not that bothered. But yeah, In Before the Lock, guys. You know, we have a lot of fun, me and Rob, and you know, we mainly just use it as an opportunity to catch up and you know, just have a bit of a chin wag, really. But yeah, primarily the focus is on modding. We don't 100% focus on that, but we try and sort of keep it about the mod scene, about either mod production from our points of view, or new mods that have come out in the industry that people might not be aware of. So try to draw attention to those. And then if we're ever at any shows or whatever, we'll generally do a bit of what we like to call a pit walk or a pinwalk, which, you know, much the same way as they do on the F1, where you sort of just walk around, try and find people and chat with them. So yeah, we have a lot of fun with it. In Before the Lock, if anybody wants to catch it. We're very irregular with when we do our shows, but we generally announce them on Pinside. And you'll probably get a Twitch update or a YouTube update when the show's about to come out, probably, you know, that we've just gone live or something. So yeah, come and say hello next time.
Is there an avenue for people to get a hold of you that are mod makers that are interested in either picking your brain or getting kind of info on how they can improve their mods? Is that something that
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, time is always of the essence, but I always make time for people in that regard, if I possibly can. But just email's the best way, or on Pinside. So I'm either Stumblor on Pinside, so just at Stumblor, or it's Davey at stumblorpinball.com.
There you go. If you want to get a hold of the man and ask some mod questions, that's how you do it.
That's how you do it.
I have a somewhat of a personal question. I think it's a little bit of a trifecta. I kind of want to just throw 3 games at you, and I'm curious, out of these 3 games, like which one of these would you be most interested in doing any kind of mod work for?
Okay.
The first one is Raven.
Okay.
The second game is Raven.
Okay.
And the third game is certainly also Raven. So I'm just curious what kind of mod stuff you think would really benefit that game.
Okay, so Raven is, am I right in saying it's Bally or is it Gottlieb?
I should know this since I make jokes about it constantly. I think it's Gottlieb. All I can think of is the back glass, which is just burned into my memory. It is a Gottlieb. It's an 86 Gottlieb.
Yeah. Okay, so I like Gottliebs. I've got a soft spot for them. My mate's going to be, if he ever watches this pod, he's going to be so upset with me that I didn't immediately know it was a Gottlieb. I've got Robo War, which I absolutely love. Jeff, you ever played Robo War?
I have, but do you think Robo War is better than Laser War?
Yes, I do. But Laser War's Bally, isn't it?
It is. But it also says that you're fighting a laser war, and I like to be informed about what I'm doing when I'm playing when I'm playing a game.
Yeah. What is my weapon? Oh, it's a laser. Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. Yeah.
There you go.
Whereas with Robo War, you don't know what you're fighting with or why the robots are there. It's very, very.
Would you say your mod for Robo War would be to explain what the Robo War is about? Like, how would you project that information through mods?
I have no idea. To be honest, what would I, if it's I don't even know. I've never played Raven. Have you played Raven?
I have played Raven. They had one on tilt for a little bit. It's got a whole slew of pop bumpers. It really is like the most unsatisfying game on the planet. Like playing it, it just feels miserable. It's up there with like Thunderbolts, or I forget what the other notoriously like horrible, that Spirit of 76, just the like bottom of the Pinside barrel, Yeah.
Well, see, I've always wanted to get a, what's the Gottlieb with the, it's not Spring Break, even though I wouldn't mind a Spring Break as well. But there's the other one that's like the Vice, like the Miami Vice ripoff one.
Oh, Heat, something Danger Heat, or
Hollywood Heat.
Hollywood Heat, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's a fun game. I love the music for that, man. It's got the DX kind of like Genesis style FM soundboard. Good stuff.
See, all the games of that era just sound amazing. Like, I mean, Genesis sounds great. TX Sector sounds great. Robo War sounds great. But I mean, Robo War for me just feels like the kind of precursor to Total Nuclear Annihilation. I just feel like that's the granddaddy of games like that.
What a brutal game. It's an amazing tournament game because it's so short playing. But it's just this like, you got to bring a bottle of lube if you're going to play TNA.
Yeah. Because it can absolutely serve you one, can't it? And your ball can just be gone in seconds. So I do like me TNA,
which is not. It's refreshing, not to bag on the longer playing games like the L ones. I mean, Kong is a very long playing game, and most of his games are tailored towards that. But it is refreshing to play a game that can just serve your ass in under 5 minutes and you move on with your life,
In the chat, somebody said Hollywood Heat is Steve Ritchie's favorite table of all time. So there you go. And actually, that makes a lot of sense considering the way that he wears his sunglasses.
For sure. He channels the Hollywood Heat, right?
He does. He defo does. Yeah.
It's kind of like almost like the Elton John glasses, except as sunglasses instead of not sunglasses, right?
Yeah. I do like me some Elton John too, as you can see in the background, everybody.
Yeah, I see that. I think you were saying before we started our stream that Led Zeppelin is your favorite game of all time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Isn't it everybody's though? I mean, that's just like
for sure.
I don't
for
actually
sure.
mind Led Zeppelin. I
don't
think
either.
it's all right
I
game.
make comment this all the time that there's no real bad pinball machines. There's just games that you would own and games that you would not own. And it's super fun to go into an arcade and see a game like Raven or Led Zeppelin and rip that spinner.
I mean, you say that there's no bad pinball games, but then have you played Blues Brothers and or Spinal Tap?
I haven't. I haven't played any of the God, what is the name
Blues
of that
Brothers is marginally better than Spinal Tap. Spinal Tap is, well, I feel,
not ideal.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be making any Stumblor mods for Spinal Tap, is what I'm hearing.
No. So yeah, no.
Somebody asked about what your like dream theme would be. So I guess in that same vein, is there a game that you would love to make a mod for, but it's not financially viable because there's not enough people that have the game? Like, is there an idea that you like played a pin and you were just like, oh my God, like this would be, if I did this would be so cool on this, but it's just not worth it.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. And like when it comes to dream themes, I'm probably less focused on theme than what some people are. Like some people heard that Harry Potter was coming out and they're like, I'm all in. I don't care how it looks. This is like my dream theme. It's like, I don't think I've ever said that anything is my dream theme, even for things that I absolutely love, like Goonies or Back to the Future or, IPs that, mean a lot to me and mean a lot to my childhood and my sense of being or whatever. Sure. Still like, Goonies coming out, I'll be like, that's cool. I'm really looking forward to that. But it's not Davey, like
I can't help but point out that you had said that you love Back to the Future so much and that you were continuing to work with Dutch Pinball. And many of us do know that Dutch Pinball does have the Back to the Future license for their upcoming potential DPX games. I'm just saying.
I don't think they've ever actually 100% confirmed that one.
They have not. But the rumor mill, she be a spinning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To your point,
I don't know anything about that, I'm afraid. Yeah.
To your point, though, that the theme is essentially a coat of paint, and that the rules and as much as that is important for the experience and the music and sound design and art package really do help sell the entire experience.
Yeah.
The design and the code really.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna contradict myself slightly here, in that I do believe that games should be designed for the theme. So when Spooky do things like they do a double theme, I'm really against doing that because I think it like breaks the fourth wall in a way. Sure. You're sort of saying to everybody, we can just put any theme on this game. Doesn't matter.
If you were watching and don't know what Davey's talking about, if, for example, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre was also released as Looney Tunes and is essentially the exact same game except for the art package and the callouts and whatnot are different. I believe the rules are the same. I haven't played one back to back, so I don't know.
No, they are different, I think. Okay. They are slightly different. But for me, it's just something that shouldn't ever be done. And I'm really pleased that they have chosen not to do that on Evil Dead. And I think that it's
which is a really great game. Have you played Evil Dead?
Amazing. Yeah, man. I am all in on Evil Dead. They absolutely smashed it on that, and I can't wait to get one here.
Good luck. Do you have one ordered?
Yeah.
Oh, you do, you lucky. God. I was so happy to see them hit the top 10 list on Pinside. I mean, you want these I can't call Spooky an upcoming pinball company anymore. It's been around for forever, or at least quite a while. But the smaller companies, they need wins. They need to be. What's that?
They're disruptors, I said. So yeah, I do believe that they are still up and comers.
I think that Spooky is the modern Gottlieb.
Yeah. And like, so we ran into Bug at the last Texas show, and he was just over the moon man. You know, like full of energy. They sold their last game at the show, which added to that energy. And when I was chatting with him about it, I was like, oh man, like this is an absolute cracker. You guys have knocked it out of the park. How does it feel? And he was just, oh, feels so good, man. Feels so good. And I said, you know, because, you know, the last couple of titles, they've been good, man, but, you know, maybe they haven't sort of quite hit like you wanted them to hit. Would that be right to say that? And he was like, yeah, that's probably true. And he's like, you know, you just try everything sometimes and, you know, you think you've done your best work and then it still doesn't sell. And you're like, what do they want? That was his words. And then he's like, and then we did this and it starts selling really well. And you're like, we do know what we're doing. We can do this. And so I think that Evil Dead was just like that shot of confidence and adrenaline that they needed. They needed to hear that, that they had what it takes to make a game that people really, really like and want. And I'm so pleased for them because, you know, they work their absolute butts off. You know, they've copped a lot of shit over the years for their QC, and probably rightly so, I think.
Sure, their games break a lot, but they take a lot of risks to make interesting games, and a lot of companies don't have the balls to do that. Yep,
that's definitely true. So, you know, I love Spooky, and I also love the new Spooky. Like, it's my favorite version of Spooky is the latest Spooky with their Evil Dead, and, you know, leaning into the gore and leaning into the horror and leaving the Looney Tunes at the door, you know, and leaving the double-barreled themes at the door. And
that game's fun for how much is not in it either. Not like, I mean, there's a lot to play, and if you do find an Evil Dead, there's plenty of game there to both enjoy and to own. But, you know, there's a number of wizard modes that aren't in there. There's some other modes that aren't in it, but just the base fundamental playfield layout and it being a wide body is just super fun to play. It's just great. It's a great game.
Yeah. It's a cracker. Now I'm hoping they produce Motorhead next. That's my
that's your dream theme right there is Motorhead.
Not necessarily.
Isn't there a homebrew Motorhead?
Yeah, well, that's the one. So that got made by Rhoda Dave, but Spooky were hosting it at Expo last year. I'm sure it was Expo last year. No, it was Texas last year. Sorry, I get my shows confused. I think Texas last year, Spooky were hosting that homebrew at their stand. And then Rhoda Dave then took the game to Spooky headquarters because he's from New Zealand, took it to Spooky headquarters after that for a couple of weeks. Just if
that doesn't imply what's happening there, get going, rumor mill. Come on, internet.
Yeah, and I would love that to happen because it was a great game, man. It had like scissor flippers and it had a fist that shouts out "You've been fisted" when you hit the shot, and I mean it was just completely bonkers and, you know, so much fun. So yeah, I'm hoping they make that one, man.
It's refreshing to hear that kind of, like, not slapstick, but like, you know, the 90s had a very like specific type of pinball humor where it wasn't really taking itself so serious, and I feel like that's been kind of lost, that passion for it just being like fun, weird.
Yeah. Well, that's why I like Kong so much, man, because I feel like that kind of silliness, and Godzilla too, you know, is very much sort of in that vein as well. You know, like go and press the flipper button on the side of Godzilla when the game's not on, and you know, get told to put your shoes back on. Like, you know, it's that kind of stuff that, you know, just
there's
makes
a few of the Kong callouts that are weird though in that way though, where it's like, get off your cell phone, and one, the girl's like, I'm not used to being kept waiting, and it's like, whoa. Like, whether you think that's funny or not, it's just, it's not very timeless. Like, at least some of the call outs on, like, you know, you think of these 90s games, those call outs are timeless. Like, in 20 or 30 years, they're going to stand up. And I just don't think the Kong ones are going to do that. 20 or 30 years, people are going to be like, what's a cell phone?
Yeah, you might be right.
But anyways, but back to Stumblor. I have one more question because we're kicking almost 2 hours, and I know it's late over in the UK. The most important question that I've been curious about, the name Stumblor.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's a bit of a weird story.
I
So
love
it used
weird
to be
stories.
okay. So it's actually a Simpsons reference, weirdly, or like a side Simpsons reference. So do you remember the episode? Yeah, do you know? Are you a Simpsons aficionado? by
I'm
any
not an
chance, Jack?
aficionado, but I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so I watched a lot of Simpsons, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So do you know that episode where Marge got addicted to playing gambling machines and stuff, and
Yes.
Homer's making an outfit for Lisa, and it's the state of Nevada, and he's just messed it all up or whatever, and Lisa goes, "I'm a monster," and Homer goes, "You're not a monster, Lisa. The only monster here is the gambling monster that's taken over your mother. I call him Gambler." So anyway, I've just lost my speaker. Hold on. So that's the bit in The Simpsons, right? And
Okay.
anyway, we were walking home drunk one night, and my mate fell in a bush, and he screamed out, "I'm a monster!" And I said, "No, Jeff. I'll just use your name. No, Jeff, you're not a monster. The only monster here is the monster that's taken over your walking. I call him Stumblor," and that's where it started.
That's hilarious.
So, yeah.
And you were like, this is the name we got to go for the company, right?
Well, this is the thing, right? So it was just one of those random stupid jokes that we laughed about because we're all Simpsons nerds. And then I made a blog, I don't know, a year later, because that's what everyone was doing at that time in
Got a blog, get your blog on.
Yeah, get that blog out there. And I was like, what am I going to call my blog? What am I going to call my blog? And so I was just like, I'll call it Stumblor. So I called the blog Stumblor, and then did a bit of blogging for a couple of years. That was all good and well. And then when I got over to the UK and got into pinball, I jumped on the forum Pinball Info, which is the UK equivalent of Pinside, and I was like, what am I going to call my username? And I was like, I'll just call it Stumblor. And then you sort of just keep doing this, just you reusing these names, not thinking it's going to be anything.
And all of a sudden you're stuck with it.
And then you're stuck with it. So now it's Stumblor, it's just a stupid. If my mate hadn't have fallen into that bush all those years ago, then I'd be called like Davey's Zizzle Mods or something.
See, and then it wouldn't be so successful. If anything, you owe your buddy a pint, man. Like he really, the MVP is the bush, really.
Yeah. I need to go find that bush, man, and put a
transplant that, put it in your home. Official Stumblor bush.
Yeah.
So amazing, right? I wanted to just throw it to chat too, as we're, like I said, closing in on 2 hours here. If you have any questions that you want to fire at Davey, please go for it. And while we're doing that, Davey, if there's anything going on with Stumblor that you want to plug on the channel to all 4 of our viewers, let it rip.
Nah, man. Just so look, we're releasing a Jurassic Park mod very soon. It's going to be for the back of the playfield. I'm not going to say too much on it at the moment, but it'll be an interesting little foray into Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is a game that I've been getting asked about for ages and ages and ages. I've never owned the game, but recently I was able to pick up a nice premium. And I thought, hey, let's give it a bash. Like Jurassic Park probably came out before the age of modern day modding. So it doesn't have a heap available for it. I know Lior did some sculpts for the T-Rex. And I know there's a few other little bits and pieces. I think there's possibly some pop bumper mods that showed like the resin and the mosquito and a few other bits and pieces. I know that the Data East version of the game's got a whole bunch of mods as well. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of things there that I'm really excited about doing, and it's going to be using a new sort of technology that I've not used before. And I'm really excited to see what people think of it. So that should be out within a week or 2.
Amazing. Not only I traded my Jurassic Park temporarily for a Star Trek. So I'm not going to have my Jurassic Park back for like a month or 2, which is super frustrating, but I'm definitely, count me in on that one. I'm going to see if I can get on that list sooner than later.
Okay. All right. Yeah, well, anybody who sort of feels like they miss out sometimes, and I do get people from time to time who are upset that they feel like they've missed out on announcements or whatever, the best way of learning about what we're up to is to jump on the website and stick your email address in either the pop-up that comes, or the footer also has a sign up, and that'll get you on the email list. We send out emails fairly regularly letting everybody know of updates and offers and new announcements and products and stuff. So jump on that and you'll be the first to know.
Awesome. Here, can you give people a visual tour of your space real quick? We talked about that right before we started. Well, why not? We'll send off the stream with that.
Yeah. Okay. So
hey, it's
I
us.
usually get, I know what I need to do.
Oh, I think we lost your audio. I don't know if you can hear me. Still no audio, but I'll talk. So this is the corner where I have my pinball machines, and this is my Elton John, and this is my Metallica, and I'm probably gonna be doing a lot of mods for Metallica, my favorite band. Oh, this is Godzilla. Someday I'll work on some mods for it. This is another game. That's a Foo Fighters, I think. Oh, there's a lot more pinball machines over here. The problem is Davey doesn't know that we can't hear him right now, but that's okay. This space is way larger than I thought. That's the corner of my studio. That's the floor. Oh, he does have a TNA. This is my TNA that we were talking about, a top secret project. That's Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm going to point my finger at it. I'm going to point my finger over here at the side of total nuclear annihilation. No, that's me talking. His audio's muted. Oh, Davey, I wish I could let him know. Davey! Well, this looks like storage components for components that they probably mass assemble for all of the different mods. This is my mods. This is my big bucket of mods. Yeah, get your awesome mods. These are lots of robbers. I use them on my games. Yeah. Plenty of buckets. Get lots of buckets for everything. Yeah. Electric board. This is my Yorkshire tea pile. So this is the most fascinating silent tour. For anybody watching this or listening to the podcast, we are currently being given an amazing visual tour of Stumblor Mods workshop. Everything from his component boards and assembly line stuff and machines all over the place. He's got tons of pins hiding behind and around the corner. But unfortunately, Davey's mic is not working as he stepped away and transferred it to his mobile camera. So he's currently going around pointing at all sorts of interesting objects, and we can't hear it. So, yeah. I guess, I was going to play some moody chanting to go along with this. Unfortunately, I can't send him a message. If anybody has got Davey's cell phone, please text him and tell him that we can't hear anything he's saying. Yeah. I guess I'll go back to describing what we're looking at. So we're looking at more buckets on shelves, lots and lots of stock of what I imagine are his assembly boards for when they do mass construction of this. Some project games. He's got a Medieval Madness. That looks like a Cactus Canyon, I think. I can't. Oh, no, that's Creature. And then an Attack from Mars, which looks like the CGC remake, as it has the larger display, which, by the way, plug for myself. That's currently what I'm streaming right now, if you're curious to see that. Let's see, what is that? A Dracula. Oh, man, I sold my BSD. I'm so sad about that. He has the new translate on it. That's not the original one. Also, that display is huge. I would love to hear what he's saying about it. It looks like he modded his BSD to have a giant display. And a Lord of the Rings. We got one of those. It's right there. There it is. Let's see, what's that? That's Bride of Pinbot, I believe. This is testing my pinball knowledge. That's Funhouse. Can't tell if that's the remake. Yeah, this is an insane collection. And I like that D&D is boxed up. I know that he's going back to doing some D&D things. I don't know if he can hear me or not. Davey, we can't hear you. Oh, he's returning. Here we go. Okay. Hold on. Your mic's off.
How about now?
Yeah, so that was an amazing tour, but it was totally silent. I did my best to pretend being you and talk about what you would say, but I have a few questions. That Bram Stoker's has an incredibly large display in it. That's not normal. What's that?
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Because I didn't have my earpiece on. So, because I was getting echo, we probably should have ran through the test case, shouldn't we?
That's okay. So we saw storage containers and rubbers that you had. We saw some project machines that you had clearly have been working on and doing some interesting stuff. You had a creature there. Amazing collection, by the way. I saw the CGC remake of Attack from Mars, which we're currently streaming. But yeah, your BSD had a huge display. Was that a project mod?
Yeah. So that's a pin to DMD XL. We sell them on the website. As those are the ones that we mentioned before, where they're started out in V pin. They sort of moved into the real pinball sphere, and then Jörg, who is the creator of that project, or Lucky One is his handle, he sort of worked out a way of using bigger screens to essentially recreate sort of the bigger screens like CGC uses. So those bigger screens really modernize those older games.
For sure.
As you can see on BSD, and I've got one in Creature as well, but they just look absolutely fantastic and totally modernize the game. If one is available for one of my classic Bally Williams games, I always stick it in because they just look so fantastic.
I mean, plus replacing the front wood with an oversized hole that has the speakers moved to the side seems like such an easy, swappable component. Just getting a new, front.
So easy, yeah.
Front day for it.
We basically sell the entire unit. So we've sort of CNC'd a piece of plywood so that it's got the correct sort of size hole for the screens. The speakers get swapped out for ones that can fit within that small gap.
Do you include a decal or something to give it the same look on the front, or?
Yep. So we include acrylics at the front that have been modified in Photoshop, because obviously when you move holes around and stuff, exactly. Right. And different pins will have different levels of complexity for that. Like Creature was an absolute nightmare because it's like a car scene at the bottom and fences and stuff. And so you've sort of got to reshuffle things around and recreate art in certain places where it wasn't. But we've pretty much done that for most games now. So we've got them for Theatre of Magic. We've got them for Addams Family. We've got it for Star Trek Next Generation. Dracula, as you saw, Creature, loads of different games. And that
definitely was surprised you have quite a hidden secret extension to your workshop. As soon as you rounded the corner, it was just like, oh wow.
Yeah. It's just filled with pins too. It could be
darn.
It could be shelving. It could be shelving, but it could be shelves.
So what was you were pointing at a lot of the containers? Like what's in a lot of the? Is it parts for assembly for?
Now, so the problem is when I was trying to use my mic and go over here.
Round two.
Can you hear me now? I'm talking
from there. Yeah, I don't know, Davey. We got no video from your iPhone. If you can still hear me.
Yeah.
And
so I was testing that theory again. But I figured that I could use my microphone and my camera, but it's not working. So I'll work that out later.
No worries. Yeah, that's the rest. That's what we do. We do it live. Fuck it.
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
No, nothing.
Yeah. So those boxes are essentially filled with parts for the various mods. And actually that management of parts, boringly and weirdly, has been one of the most complicated things to scale as the business has gotten bigger. So, because, you know, if you think about it, any sort of manufacturing company, if you run out of one part, the whole line shuts down,
right?
You know, so
Yeah.
and if you've sort of preemptively sold 50 mods with the expectation that you'll be able to build 50 mods, and then you can't build 50 mods because you've run out of screws, then suddenly you've got a problem where you're holding on to people's money. You have to get in contact with people. You're doing email. You know, it's just, so getting on top of that and making sure that that is a smooth operation has been one of the biggest challenges with creating a manufacturing company. And, you know, we leverage a lot of technology in order to support that. So, you know, inventory management systems, but also systems that monitor mods going out and then automatically know what parts are in those orders so they can decrement the inventory management system automatically by 3 screws and an acrylic or something like that. So to remove the human element.
You know, you say that this was like a side job. Davey, this doesn't sound like a side job. This sounds like a full-time job.
Yeah, it's a full-time job now. Yeah, I've sort of resigned from my main gig a little while ago, and now doing this full-time because it's quite a big operation now. And how lucky am I that I've been able to do that? You know, I mean, not many people are, you know, get given the opportunity to turn their you know, the hobby that they love into something that can, you know, support their family and do those kinds of things. So I'm incredibly grateful to everyone for giving me that opportunity. I think, you know, I've found it to be, you know, the love and support that I get from everybody within the community has just been, you know, overwhelmingly great, and you know, pushes me to keep doing good things, I suppose.
Awesome. Plus, also, it's nice because from a business aspect, like the manufacturer needs to make a great game, and then once you see that a game is great, you're like, well, I can now make it even better. So, you know, and I feel like a lot of people that have a game that they love are already interested in making it better if there's an opportunity to do so. Would you say that that carries true to your sales?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of touched a little bit on what the decision-making process was when a game gets released and whether you decide to make a mod for it. And I think that's sort of it's multifaceted. Sort of, you know, you try and look at, first of all, you look at how well the game is being received. You know, is it generally positive? Do you think the sales are going to be good? You know, and if all of those sort of things are correlating, okay, well, that's one data point to consider. Number 2, is it a game that looks to have areas that could be conducive to modding? And are those areas the type of, you know, is the artwork and is those type of areas or the mods you have in mind conducive to your style of modding? For me, it's generally structures that have some kind of lighting component or some kind of functionality or some kind of moving component. And then the final one, and the one that's like, so I guess the hardest to try and work out is, are the people who are buying this pinball machine the types of people who are going to want to mod their pinball machines? Because if you sort of think about Godzilla, you know, the customers for Godzilla were overwhelmingly sort of positive about modding in general and tended to mod their
What's
games.
An example of a
really
game that doesn't have tinkerers?
That's a good question as well. Let's sort of think about that. Well, I think like all games have tinkerers. All games have people who are modding them. But I think that possibly, you know, you could look at John Wick, Venom, you know, maybe games that are more transitive, like, you know, people will generally only mod games if they feel like they're going to be in their collection for a while, because there's no point sort of modding a game if it's just going to be out the door in a couple of weeks.
Sure. The people that post on Pinside, like they have all these mods in it, like it's increasing the value past the value of the mods, are living in a dream world.
Exactly. So yeah, and it doesn't. So so really the only reason why you do it is for your own enjoyment, and you would generally do that only if you're hanging on to the game for a chunk of time so that you can enjoy the work that you've put into it, and you can show your friends and you go, that was that. A lot of the people that I speak to, we produced a stainless steel Tokyo neon sign with a special design for Project Pinball, which is a group of pinball enthusiasts who do great work for children's charities. And they do a raffle every year to raise money for the charity. And so we produced this stainless steel Tokyo neon sign, and it ended up going to 3 people, and they sort of shared the prize, and I produced some more so that all 3 of them could share it. And they all loved that because it sort of increased the story of winning that piece. And they all wanted them individually numbered so that that could also add to the story of it sort of being a 1 of 3 piece. So I think that's sort of part of it in a way, is that storytelling aspect. I was at Expo at that time. This happened. 3 of us ended up winning it. I got number 1. Look, you can see it's written on the back. I met Davey. Davey sent out, like that kind of, so then when your pinball friends are over, you've just got a talking point, something to point out to them. And, I think that's part of it. So yeah, it's one that we're always sort of analyzing and trying to get to the bottom of, just because it kind of helps us make better decision making, I suppose, on what games to focus on. Cool. I mean, ultimately, you just choose the games you like and the mods that you think will be cool.
To your point about that story, I mean, it's like pinball machines are, as much as a game, it's about making the memories around it, right? Like, yeah, sure. You remember playing Godzilla because Godzilla is great, but really you remember being at the bar when you beat your friend by 2 billion points or whatever, and he had spilled his drink on somebody or something. I mean, like, you're creating memories around the pinball machine, not inside of it.
For sure.
Well, Davey, thank you so much for taking the time to be on my podcast and talk about all of the interesting stuff going on and how it is to make mods and how you built this company from a single Pinside post. Wild. I hope you truly do find that bush and transplant it to wherever you are, or buy your mate a beer. Yeah. Because it seems like Stumblor's got so much cool stuff going on, and pinball's not stopping anytime soon. So.
Awesome, Jeff. Thanks so much for having us on, man. It's been a blast, and thanks for hearing my crazy stories. I'm just I'm looking forward to catching up in person at a show maybe, and sharing a beer and making some memories.
Are you going to Pinball Expo?
I'll be at Expo. Yep. Pretty much go to Expo and Texas Pinball Festival every year now. So yeah, if anybody wants to, I'm always sort of milling about. I never usually have a stall, just because I'm sort of busy, drinking beers and making memories. So I'll always be floating about. If anybody ever sees me and wants to come up and say hi, I've always got time for a chat and a game of pinball. So make sure you do that.
It's where all the important business happens, anyways. Is at the bar near like these expos and conventions, anyways. Exactly. But yes, I would absolutely love to meet in person. I will be at Pinball Expo and Texas at TPF moving forward. Those are going to be my major stops for now, since apparently I'm doing this pinball thing.
Great, but good to hear. Good to hear.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, so the other thing we do is we jump on to we raid. We got to do a raid because this show is live. And if anybody else has a last question while I go and try to find a channel to raid, now's the time, or forever hold your peace, or at least until next time we have Davey on. Maybe when he makes his new, releases his new Jurassic Park mod to send to me. No.
Yeah, exactly.
So without further ado, thank you so much for everybody for watching. If you want to catch us on video on demand, it's going to be up on all the socials, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want to listen to it on a podcast and hear me talking in an Arnold voice while Davey gives a tour of his silent studio, that one should be pretty funny. So, yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Stick around till we're done rating. Goodbye.
See you guys. See ya.